there's a lot going on right now. I feel like you need 2 or 3 main things, and that's the focus of the shows. But there's a lot going on. I feel like there's been discourse once the Punk thing happened back at Brawl Out. That things that caused a lot of, that was very problematic for the company. Like, I wish that could have been nipped in the bud, stopped right there, and had never gone any further. Um, and it's AEW is no longer. I mean, they're not in the honeymoon phase right now. That's kind of over.
Sure.
People loved what they were doing, but that honeymoon phase is over.
And that was going to happen no matter what, right?
Of course, that was definitely going to happen, no doubt. And AEW earned a lot of goodwill over the first few years, especially during the pandemic and being a different alternative to WWE, whatever else. But I think through some of the stuff with Punk and the Bucks and the fights and the backstage stuff and Jungle Boy, all this stuff, this hurt some of that goodwill. And I feel like that probably detoured some people from their support of the company at the end of the day. I mean, that's my honest take on it.
You said there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Does any
what
of
do
that...
I mean by that?
Please.
Would you like me to explain?
Please.
I mean, Will Ospreay, who is incredible, one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. You have Will Ospreay show up. Boom, it's a big deal. I feel like that is something that should have just been talked about for 4 to 6 weeks. Directly after that, Okada, boom. Okada's a big star. Still, a lot of the people here in America are probably familiarizing themselves with him, obviously, especially a more casual fan. If you understand kind of my idea of the AEW casual fan, people in America that might not follow New Japan Pro Wrestling. So he shows up the next week, and I feel like that should have been a big deal. That for 4 to 6 weeks, we should have really highlighted him. That should have been what everybody was talking about. The week after that, boom, Mercedes Moné shows up. And that could have been another big deal for 4 to 6 weeks. That's what I'm saying. When a lot is going on, you have jammed a lot of stuff on the program and into the viewer's eyes. And I feel like these events could have been longer and taken more time to develop and really highlight how big of a deal it is to get this huge superstar to AEW. And whenever I say there's a lot going on, I feel like that's what I mean when I'm saying there's a lot going on.
Well, so there's 2 elements of that. This is a great conversation, by the way. There's 2 elements to that. Number one, I think it goes back to my point of having to meet all of these needs of programming and having to fill all that time. So we got to load it. Let's bring as many big names as we can to fulfill those needs. That, I think, is number one, my opinion. Number two, I think the absolute creative peak and creative high moment, like I would argue the greatest moment in AEW history, maybe, was All Out 2021 when Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson debuted, and the subsequent weeks that followed when you got Omega versus Danielson at the first Grand Slam show, like that moment.
We also followed up on both of them for 4 to 6 weeks afterwards. You know what I mean?
Right, for sure. But so my point is bringing those names in, and then that was shortly after Punk too. I think that gave the impression to a lot of people within AEW, okay, like if we create the buzz like this, like what we did with them, we can do that again here and get that buzz. Because, man, when that happened, I mean, it felt like the biggest thing in wrestling going on when those 3 guys all came in at the same time.
That was a huge move, and that was kudos to Tony Khan for doing that night. That was great. That's Brody and I, we're always going to be a double debut that night. But for him to pull out the whole thing, when he did the whole thing with Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole, that was great.
Yeah. So, like, I think people look at that, including Tony. I mean, Tony has spoken about that moment on multiple occasions to this day about how transformative he felt that moment was for the company. And I was there. You were there. It was massive. It was one of the greatest pro wrestling pay-per-views I've ever been to. So when you see those 3 debuts recently with Okada, Moné, and Ospreay, it's almost like trying to harness that energy again. And it created some buzz. But I think what you're arguing here, pacing it out, allows for the audience to digest it a little more. And I think the borderline word that I would use that has maybe led to some of the audience turning on AEW is the word saturation. The content being saturated, the individual stars being saturated. And that, in turn, Matt, leads to what I believe is bad faith claim. And I've said this on the record, that I believe is a bad faith claim, even though Tony Khan didn't agree with me, that AEW doesn't have storytelling. Then when people make those claims, there's no stories being told. It's only matches. I think they put that hand in hand with the idea that the talent is so saturated and you just get matches and matches and matches. Whereas I don't believe that that's the case. And that's to me why some of the public sentiment has turned.
Okay. I just feel like even the buzz that they were working on creating when you had Ospreay, you had Okada, you had Mercedes back to back to back. I feel like Ospreay now gets caught in the Okada avalanche.
Sure.
People are they're still gonna love him, they're still gonna deal him. But I feel like it takes a little bit of the importance off of him. It takes a little bit of the spotlight off of him. And then once you do Mercedes after that, it does the same thing to Okada and a little more on Ospreay. It's just like I feel like we could have those guys. They just could be. They're such great, huge, big stars. And I feel like when you see them show up on the TV, the next 4 weeks of your programming, they need to be one of the focal points and nothing else new, because they are the new deal that you are promoting, you're putting on the map, and you need to make them seem as important as they could possibly be. And
Sure.
I understand that mindset where they're like, oh my God, we got to get them buzzing this week. Got to get them buzzing this week. We got to get people talking again this week, but also it's just that also isn't sustainable. I mean, what you're going to have to get people talking with is your whatever story or this arc you have, this character on this journey you have these characters on, and then eventually once they get to that big match that is the blow off or the finale of their deal, then they go out and they like tear the house down and have a great match. I feel like that is what has to be done, because that is sustainable. Bringing someone in, every single week, to like, make the people tune in, make the people tune in, make the people tune in. I don't think that's sustainable.